Hi all, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Today is Friday, April 13th, 2018, and you're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. Our topic today, Matterport plus Leica Geosystems BLK360 Beta. Super excited about today's show. And joining me in the virtual studio, Leon, how about introducing yourself?
Hi, Dan. It's Leon here. I'm coming out of the UK from Ascot near Heathrow. I'm a serious hobbyist in when it comes to 360 images, and lately my interest have gone into the scanning side of the business, and I'm absolutely fascinated by new terminologies like point clouds and meshes and stuff like that, which
Terrific.
I didn't know about a few weeks before.
Terrific. And I'm super excited about having you on the program today with me, because in the We Get Around Network Forum, your member name helped me out, Leon Van Swell.
Yes, that's about right.
Okay, sort of, close?
Yes, it's close enough for me.
Well, how should I pronounce it?
Leon Van Zweel or Leon Van Zweel.
Leon Van Zweel. Okay. Leonvanzweel. Leon is a regular contributor in the We Get Around Network Forum. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, join us on WGAN-TV live at 5 in the We Get Around Network Forum, wegetaroundnetworkforum.com or WGAN-TV.com. So Leon's a frequent contributor in the We Get Around Network Forum, often has some commentary, adds a lot to the community. And so I thought it would actually be really helpful to have Leon on the show today, maybe to do a reality check with me in terms of the things that I like to talk about. Today's program, we're going to cover three things: the beta testing that's going on right now with Matterport and Leica Geosystems. They're testing Matterport plus the BLK360. I guess I would say that would be a image and laser scanning device. I probably don't describe it exactly the way Leica would, but we're going to talk about the beta test. Second is to talk about some predictions that I have in this space. And then third is tell you about some upcoming shows on WGAN-TV that I'm particularly excited about for architects, engineers, construction, and the AEC space. So if you're interested, if you're a Matterport service provider and you're interested in this AEC space, or you already have clients or prospects that are architects, engineers in the construction space, got a lot of exciting shows coming up on the We Get Around Network, WGAN TV. So Leon, I thought I would kind of just riff for a little bit of what actually what I probably should do is do a little demo here. And it looks like I may have closed all my windows that I had. Nope, there they are. Okay, so let me actually do a little bit of a demo of what we're talking about today. This will just take me a second. So thanks for standing by. We'll do a little screen share, if I can do this right. Looking for my TV channel. Okay, almost there. And I'm going to share this. So this is an example of I'd normally call this a Matterport 3D tour. Maybe there needs to be another name for this, because this is actually a mashup of both Matterport, using the Matterport Pro 2D camera, as well as a Leica BLK360 camera. And so, I'm going to actually talk about why I don't think this is a great example for Matterport to show. I think they could have actually done a little bit better, and I'll talk about how I think they could have improved that, if I may be so bold. But one of the things that you'll notice here is that you can actually see the dome in the three-dimensional model. And if you were just shooting with the Matterport camera, that wouldn't happen because the camera would not be able to capture the data beyond a story or two. So I think that's one thing that you probably notice about this. And then if we fly in, there's the photography that we're used to seeing, and we can walk around some. And the magic of what we're looking at here was actually shot with mashing up the combination of Matterport Pro camera and the Leica BLK. And let me go to one other screen here just to help illustrate.
What you see there, Dan, is it's a high. Yeah, that's a picture I was referring to.
Yeah,
it's a hybrid model.
Yeah, it's very cool because if you look at these red dots on this example, they're shot with the Matterport camera, and the blue dots are actually shot with the BLK.
Yeah.
And I think what I will do at some point is come back and actually critique that scan of why I think Matterport could have done a better job. But in the really big picture, I think, Leon, what I wanted to say about the beta testing between Matterport and Leica is that this is a seminal moment in the history of Matterport. Then when we look back 10 years from now on what were major things that happened in the timeline of Matterport, the introduction of the mashup of Matterport and Leica BLK360 is it's a seminal moment in the history of Matterport, and I say that because it will enable all kinds of interesting things to happen in the in the world of architects and engineers and in construction, what's referred to as the AEC space, that is really has not been possible before this mashup. Now, Matterport and Leica announced this partnership in September of 2017. It's now April 13th, so September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So we're about 8 or 9 months from the time that the partnership was announced to the time that Matterport has entered beta testing. And hopefully, I would actually say that it's likely that Matterport will exit beta testing in time for the SPAR 3D Expo and Conference, which is I want to say this.
June. I think it's early in June.
Yeah, June 3rd, June 3 through 5, June 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Hopefully I've gotten that correct. It's in the We Get Around Network Forum. And that is the conference in the United States for those in the AEC space talking about scanning technology. And I'd like to think that Matterport will come out of beta in time to be able to say, this is commercially available today. That's what they want to be able to say at that conference. So I think that's what we're racing to, or what Matterport is racing to. Now, Leon, I know in the forum you'd push back a little bit on me about, well, why don't you give me your pushback here about, like, so what? I think that's the shorthand of what you were saying to me in the forum.
Well, since I wrote my comment in the forum, I've done a fair bit of reading up, and I might have changed my mind a bit.
Why is that?
Because I now have a much better understanding as to how both Matterport and the BLK360 complements each other.
Take us through that.
They don't substitute each other, because both have got their strengths and weaknesses. Matterport excels in terms of speed, and the BLK360 excels in terms of accuracy, distance, and being able to utilize in direct sunlight. So it will but it's for specific applications. It's application specific, where we require greater distances, higher ceilings outside. That's where the BLK will really add a lot of value to. And I think it's really going to open up the market, because the BLK standing on its own is still relatively expensive compared to a Matterport scan in terms of time and hardware.
Well, you've covered a lot of ground there. So let me see if I can also talk about the highlights of what I heard from you.
Okay.
And I heard three things. First is when you have a very large indoor space, and this dome that we were looking at is an example of that. When you have a very, very large space, super high ceiling, the BLK enables you to cover with scan data. And then I'll be a little bit confusing here, because on the Leica BLK 360 website, they talk about up to 100 feet. And on the Matterport website, they talk about up to almost 200 feet. But the point is probably at least 10 stories versus 1 or 2 stories that the BLK 360 can capture scanning data. And that's significant if you have a warehouse space and you need to capture it.
Well, the BLK can go up to 100 meters, but effectively it's good for 60 meters, which is about 200 feet. Now, because the lasers, they diverge as they move out in space, so the accuracy of the points as they become further apart reduces your accuracy.
So that might explain the difference of why on the Leica Geosystems BLK 360 website it talks about 100 meters, and I want to say on the Matterport website it actually talks about a greater height than that. So
from the feedback that I've read now is that you can quite easily have 50 meters between scan points with a BLK.
Yeah. Now, let me just ask you, because I know on the Matterport website, it talks about 50 feet apart, and you mentioned 50 meters apart.
Yes, I think it is very, it depends whether you're inside or outside and the kind of structures, because you need to have an overlap. If you're scanning inside, I would say 50 feet is probably more reasonable, but 50 feet is substantial. You're not going to do it in anything smallish. It's going to be big warehouses or hangars or whatever.
Yes, and for comparison purposes, when you're scanning with Matterport, it's likely to be between 7 and 10 feet rather than 50 feet.
Yes.
Now the trade-off is that the BLK 360 can take, depending on your setting, 3 minutes to do a 360 versus Matterport, which may be, let's call it 30 seconds. So it may take 10 times as long to do the scanning. But I think going back to what you were pointing out from your research, that you had learned 3 things. One was in terms of the height, large spaces. 2, the ability to scan outdoors, which Matterport is really not designed for. And then 3rd is to be able to scan in total bright light outdoors. So with Matterport, we've all been trying to figure out, well, how do we scan outside, making sure that the camera doesn't see the sun? That the BLK 360 enables outdoor shooting in bright light, and enable scanning capture in very large elevation or large spaces.
Yes, I think I've been working a bit with photogrammetry as well, and looking for a way in which you can do the outside and the inside in one model. And that has led me to QPix,
let's save that when we get to the 3rd part of our program. Is that all right?
but at the moment, you can now seamlessly match your outside with your inside in the same tour. And I've just recently saw a scan that a guy, I think, I can't recall his name off the top of my head, has done up in Norway or somewhere up there where it was very cold and icy, and he did a scan out in the snow and inside the lodge that he was in, and they seamlessly integrated with each other, which I thought was quite amazing to see it because the Matterport model is, I find it a very smooth operating model, and from a visual perspective, it is an easy navigatable model, and it's actually very user-friendly to navigate, which I really appreciate.
Well, to kind of give the conversation context, it used to be there were LiDAR scanners that just scanned, didn't do any of the photography. It was just capturing the data, typically a point cloud. And then there were 360 cameras, Ricoh Theta S, Insta360 that just captured the photography. And even at a high-end, some high-end solutions for 360 that only captured the photography. So now what we're seeing is when we go to a trade show like SPAR 3D, is that the scanners are looking more like cameras plus scanners. And then when we start looking at Matterport kind of solutions, we see photography solutions that are starting to also incorporate scanning. And so the two worlds are starting to blend together. And on one hand, we talk about a Matterport camera, an under $5,000 camera, an under $4,000 camera. And then we have the BLK360, an under $20,000 solution by the time you add some software and everything else that you need to it. So I think for those of us that are Matterport photographers, we immediately think, oh my gosh, this camera is 4 times as much as my Matterport, and I'm already complaining, about that. How can I possibly afford that? On the other hand, going to SPAR 3D Expo and Conference last year in Houston, 2017 in Houston, I think my takeaway was this was an audience that looked at this scanner, the BLK360, with, wow, look how inexpensive that camera is, because most of the other things have been 40,000, 50,000, 100,000, 500,000.
When you look at where the BLK360 is being positioned into the marketplace, you need to understand it's not competing against the Matterport. It's competing against the other technologies and scanners that are substantially more expensive. So its price positioning comes here, and it provides an output that is exceptional for its price point in comparison of the technologies that are currently available in the market. Now, if you look at the Matterport business as such, the application is in a different market. It's not it's not in the residential market. You will perhaps, if you're a Matterport service provider, rent, borrow, or use a camera on the odd occasion where you shoot a residential property with extremely high ceilings, or you need to have the external shot in sunlight, but there are ways to work around that. So this is more for the AEC market and for the large spaces, the commercial spaces, where you for the auditoriums, where you don't want to shoot every 8 feet.
Yes, I think anybody watching our program, any We Get Around Network Forum member that's a Matterport service provider and just simply looks at it and says, oh, wow, I don't need a $20,000 solution. I'm happy with Matterport. I think the point is, Leon, is to use the right tool for the right circumstance. And what my takeaway at SPAR 3D conference was that when people didn't need such a precise scan of a space for whatever reason they were scanning it, they were still using a $500,000 scanner or a $40,000 scanner with someone that required a lot of expertise, as opposed to saying, oh, maybe for what we need, Matterport's the right solution, or maybe for what we need, the BLK360 is the right solution. So rather, if you have to hammer in a nail, one nail, you might say, well, I need a hammer. You're not going to pull out a jackhammer to put the one nail into the board. So, so many members of the We Get Around Network Forum community have been writing in the forum about saying, I have a space, it's 100,000 square feet. It's a ginormous warehouse. And they're thinking, okay, well, how do I do Matterport in order to scan that space? And it said, well, do I need to get a higher tripod so that I can capture the ceiling? So the point is to use the right tool. And so as you pointed out, Leon, as you pointed out, the BLK360 is not the solution for scanning a house. It may not be the solution. The BLK360 may not be the right solution when absolute precision is necessary. That would require a higher end device. But there's probably a whole lot of AEC opportunities where BLK360 is appropriate, or where the mashup of Matterport and BLK intersect, and then go back to that 3D tour that you were talking about.
Yes, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Matterport in complementing the BLK. So anybody with a BLK 360 actually needs a Matterport as well, because in terms of especially the relatively close proximity or the smaller spaces, it's much quicker to go through them with a Matterport. And if you can scan 60 or 70% of your model with a Matterport, and only the challenging spaces with the BLK 360, that's going to save you a lot of time and money as well. So I think for Matterport, there's an opportunity here. If I'm the owner of a BLK 360, I would definitely have a Matterport as well. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, so let me add two things to this. First, for those that haven't watched the interview that I did with one of the engineers at Leica Geosystems at Spark 3D in 2017, Greg, the engineer, in fact, if you want to see that video, we'll place it right here in the We Get Around Network forum once we publish this video, so you could also see a detailed conversation with that engineer. But what he pointed out in that interview was, first, on the photography settings, you have a choice, which is, do you want it taking pictures quickly, or do you want HDR? And so depending on how you set the camera, I want to say that you can get a JPEG file that may be 125 meg. Does that sound right, Leon?
Yeah, I think the max is 150 megapixels on the
150 or 115?
150.
150. So you can, with the Leica BLK360, you can create some amazing spherical photography. On the other hand, you don't necessarily need a $20,000 camera when you could buy a DSLR camera and rotate it around and have great images, or frankly, with the Matterport Pro 2, be able to have a great HDR photography. So again, right tool for the right situation. But to know that the BLK360 is capable of HDR, I'm going to get back to Matterport's model and point that out in a moment. And then second is that the scan data compared to the Matterport scan data, the LiDAR is going to be more accurate, just in terms of the process of how the camera puts out the BLK360, putting out 360,000 dots of light per second, and measuring the time that it takes for those points of light to be read back. So it uses a technology that's similar but different than Matterport, which enables the accuracy of the scan to have a lot of precision, which is very important if the engineer needs that point cloud and is doing measurements. So I think with Matterport, I would probably describe measuring three ways. One is the scan data is good enough to estimate, to show a client this is, if you, let's say you're doing a bathroom remodeling, that you could scan the bathroom, the architect could design over the scan data and then present it to the client to say, here's what I'm proposing for your renovated bathroom as a three-dimensional model. Client says, that sounds great. Then to be able to take the scan data, give it to the general contractor, who could then say, oh, okay, I can calculate from that how much paint I need, how much floor covering, how much wall covering, et cetera. But that when you start bringing in the trades for measuring, that the scan data of Matterport is not going to be accurate enough to measure glass cut stuff.
Then I think, and I'm not an expert on this, but the way I understand it is that because of the range of the Matterport camera, because it's a much shorter range, so I think your point cloud density is about the same at about, say, for example, 10 meters as what the BLK is. So the position of the points at 10 meters is the same, for example, the BLK at 50 meters.
Point taken. So that very important if you're...
So in close proximity with a Matterport, you will probably have the same, relatively the same accuracy than you have with the BLK at a much further distance.
Mm-hmm. So in fact, if you're using Matterport and scan data is important because you're generating a point cloud, that you can make the data denser by doing more and more scans. And the more scans you do closer together, you're going to end up improving the accuracy of the point cloud. I think to Leon's point, and I'm not an expert on this topic myself, is that if you're scanning 10 feet away with Matterport or you're scanning 10 feet away with the BLK360, the likelihood of the accuracy is going to be somewhat similar. But if you're scanning 100 feet into the air, the Matterport is not going to even be able to see scan data that far away, and that the BLK360 should be as accurate as it was 10 feet away as it is 100 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we've probably gotten a little bit in the weeds in terms of all the technology. I think take it up to a marketing level. To me, this seems like it will create more opportunities for Matterport service providers, because we can now talk to clients that care about the scan data beyond what Matterport has been capable of doing.
Yes, definitely. I think the market that Matterport has, the bulk of the market that Matterport's been playing in is more concerned with the visual effects or the photographic effects of the camera, rather than the point cloud data, which is used more in the AEC field. I think more of your scans with the BLK will be more engineering orientated, where people actually need some accurate measurements. But with the beauty of it can now do both the imaging and the engineering or the point cloud side of the business.
I'd like to add to that, Leon, because when I bought my Matterport camera in July of 2014, among our first clients was a large construction space, and that meant I was now being invited to group meetings related to AEC and sending off some of the Matterport object files. And what came back for people who speak this language of BIM of creating, of being able to scan a space and then create a model on top of it, was the data of Matterport was simply not accurate enough. So, if I could go in a time machine back, I think that's 4 years ago, that I might have been able to pick up business because I would have been able to offer this hybrid solution. So I think today, April 13, 2018, as soon as Matterport exits from beta testing, that all of us will be able to offer a wider assortment of scanning solutions. And I know that many watching this program will say, yeah, but I can't afford a $20,000 solution. I want to say maybe the camera's like 15,000 or so, but you got to add some other stuff to it. The point is, when you get your first or second client, it's going to pay for the camera. One, you're scanning a much larger space than a 3,000 square foot house. Two, you're working with clients that are used to spending a lot of money. And three, they're going to pay you at a higher rate because of the different level of solution that you're providing. And even if you can't afford to buy one on the first job that you do, there's still companies that rent out these cameras, these BLK360 cameras. If you're interested in finding one, we put a few of them in the We Get Around Network forum under the tag BLK360. You'll find rental companies for it. So just because the numbers sound so much higher, don't miss out just because you think you can't afford it. Because again, the first project you may do may be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 project, because you have the expertise and now the right tool mashed up with Matterport to be able to offer a solution. And that's why I just think this is so important. It's not, to me, it's not about the specs on the camera. It's about the opportunities that it creates for Matterport service providers to be able to have yet another tool in their toolbox to service the AEC space.
Yes, I think it's pioneering new markets, which we all wish we had the ability to see exactly what the markets are, but we are pioneers, so we have to open up markets and we have to provide solutions to people that have done things the traditional way and send people out on site measuring and taking pictures with cameras, and people traveling up and down to sites all the time from all over the show, which is very expensive. Now you can bring the virtual site at all different phases of the project back to the office, and the engineers and whoever works on these projects don't actually have to go to site. Now, the thing about sites is they're never next to the office. They're always somewhere else. And if you have a local, and I think Matterport service providers now become surveyors as well, not only service providers, they actually learn new skills in becoming surveyors. Now, I think I always say the cost of a product is always relative to the revenue it can generate. And I think if you look at where these big engineering companies and architects and construction come from, they're talking, they understand what costs are, and they've got big budgets, and you're going to provide them with a service that's going to save them a substantial amount of money, one, and secondly, time. And then they will have real-time documentation of the project, which is important. I see huge opportunities here.
Which is what I see. I mean, to me, that's why this is a seminal moment. I'm going to go into in a moment, the second part of our program, which was talking about predictions. But I would like to just go back to this. I think Matterport may need to come up with actually a brand name of some sort on on describing this hybrid between Matterport and BLK360. But I just wanted to point out why I thought I'm going to be what would that be, an armchair quarterback or something, about why I was not, why I've told you I'm excited because I can see the top of the dome, but why I felt this wasn't the best example for Matterport to put forward to demo. The first is you can see all the scan data that Matterport missed, all this black area. So essentially, and perhaps they didn't have access to the space, or they had one day to do whatever it was that they were going to do. But any place that you see black, just as we're used to with Matterport, that just means we've missed scanning data. There's no data there, so that was kind of disappointing. And then all this extraneous data outside the dome is because the model has not been trimmed. I actually can't fly in to that data that's out there. So I'm sort of surprised that Matterport didn't trim the data to kind of make the model nice and clean. And then I think that if I fly in here, just to give you the point, so I can't go past that railing. So the scanning was limited to this particular space. And again, I want to be careful because Matterport, this is amazing what we're looking at. But I just would have preferred if you could have gone down to the next level so that the model that was being demonstrated had every bit of scanning data possible. And so that was I felt like it was a missed opportunity. And then, I don't know if the BLK 360 was set on HDR, if these windows would have been any nicer. I'm not sure there was anything to see. Probably doesn't add anything to the engineering drawing. But I think that was my key takeaway of looking at this was, wow, there was so much space that was not scanned, is represented, by that, by that black. Mm-hmm. Look how much data was not scanned.
Yeah, I would have liked to see something on the outside as well.
Yeah. I mean, if the point of using the BLK 360 is you can go outside in bright light, there actually is not anything in this model that demonstrates that, because I cannot fly in to any place outside the building. So if we were talking about 3 use cases for BLK 360 mashed up with Matterport, would be big indoor spaces. Second is be able to shoot outdoors, and third to be able to shoot outdoors in bright light and have the geometry, the point cloud be usable. That I felt that this model actually doesn't demonstrate the full capability of Matterport plus BLK 360. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I was going to go into unless there was something else, I was going to go into a prediction, or did you still have another thought on BLK 360?
No, I love it. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. So in terms of prediction, I should go back before I go forward. And what I mean by back is that when Matterport first started, if you think about it, it was like inventing electricity and the light bulb at the same time. Matterport had to come up with a camera, a device to run the camera. It had to come up with, let's call it an app on a device to run the camera, processing, hosting, and a way to deliver the content delivery network. It's like the Big Bang. You had to invent electricity and the light bulb at the same time. So I am so excited to see Matterport partner with another camera company, because it is actually the acknowledgement that everything doesn't have to be invented internally, that Matterport can scale faster by partnering in ways like this. Why should Matterport spend 2 seconds trying to come up with a high-end Matterport camera when there really are already better solutions that are high-end? So to that extent, I think this announcement, this partnership between Leica Geosystems and Matterport is really just the first of likely many partnerships that we will see Matterport do with other camera companies. And so if you believe that this is not a one-off, and frankly, the Matterport website actually does acknowledge that essentially that this is the first, there will be more announcements. And so in my mind, the next logical camera is the NC Tech Lazarus VR. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lazarus, 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 play on words of iris and laser. And NC Tech announced this scanner, which I want to say is, I could get pricing wrong, but I want to say it's going to be an under $10,000 solution. They announced this camera in 2017. I visited with the sales engineers. I visited with the NC Tech team at first at SPAR 3D Expo and Conference in Houston. I want to say that was back in, April or May of 2017. And I visited with them again at the 2017 Google Street View Summit in Tokyo, where they presented their cameras at both of these conferences and had expo time, and I got to visit with them. And so I did ask them in terms of timing. In fact, what I should say is everything that you see about the Leica BLK360 is sort of the same with the NC Tech Lazarus VR. I'll come to you in a moment, Leon, and ask you maybe to compare the difference in specs. The cameras do have some different specs, but the significant thing is the price difference. And I want to say that this Lazarus VR camera, a scanner and camera all in one, is likely to be less than $10,000. And I asked the team about timing, and they really didn't want to be pinned down in timing. I can understand that. Innovation's a messy business. You have a goal for a certain day, and it doesn't happen. But I believe that my takeaway from those April and May encounters was that the timing was going to be close to September 2017. And here's today, April 13th, 2018, and the camera is not commercially available for purchase. So what's playing in my mind, Leon, is that Matterport and NC Tech I could imagine that they had a conversation about doing a strategic alliance, and that has required a lot of engineering changes on the software and perhaps on the hardware side for Lazarus VR to be compatible with the Matterport cloud platform. And so, again, conferences, expos tend to be the driving force of when announcements get made. So I could imagine at SPAR 3D Expo and Conference in Anaheim, California, June 3, 4, and 5, that either on the first day of that conference or shortly before it, that Matterport and NC Tech will announce a partnership for the same thing that we're seeing with the Leica BLK360. And so I think, Leon, in the forum, I think you pushed back a little bit and said, well, Dan, that kind of goes against the grain of all the things that make the NC Tech Lazarus VR special. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I feel that they put a lot of development work into the one-stop VR application to run the camera. And now, obviously, I come from an engineering background, and I know the snags involved in engineering projects. So their timeline has slipped substantially on this product. And as I understand, it is in beta testing at the moment and there's quite a number of these units out in the field testing. Now, I haven't picked up any intel anywhere, and they play their cards very close to their chest at the moment. I haven't picked up anything that gives me an indication or evidence that there's discussions going on between them and Matterport. But then again, they're very secretive, so I wouldn't know, would I? So
nor would I. But on the other hand, what I would imagine is that as soon as Matterport announced the deal with Leica, that the team at NC Tech,
the landscape changes rapidly, and I think the landscape changed for NC Tech. Because of the engineering delays, the landscape changed, and I think, as you saw with the Iris 360 Pro,
a camera announced at 2017 Google Street View Summit to be the next generation easy, fast, and simple camera to use with mash up with Google Street View, announced and then announced as discontinued.
Yes, because the development of the one-shot 360 cameras actually became so fast and furious last year that they probably realized that the market has changed.
I would agree with you there, but I also think that they probably said, you know, we're going to take all the engineers that were working on that project and we're going to put them on this project. And even though we, NC Tech, define our camera and platform as being different, meaning you can scan the data, you can do the photography, and you can do whatever you want with it. You're not tied to our platform because NC Tech has their own cloud platform. You can do whatever you want with it. It's your photography. It's your scan data. We're not putting our logo on it. All the things that drive us a little bit, batty in terms of Matterport, in terms of closed system, proprietary. We own you own the copyright, but we own the use of everything in any way we want. I think that even though NC Tech has a unique selling proposition with those kinds of selling points, I still feel that they felt that they had to make sure that the Leica BLK didn't beat them on the point of, and it works with Matterport.
Yes. Now I will. It depends on how they view their business model. Whether they're looking at making money out of product sales, or whether they want recurring income out of a sort of a similar.
Which do you think it is?
Traditionally, I think they basically product sales, and I think that's the way they continue at the moment. If you look at the other products, it's all product sales. So I think you're probably right in because they competing with the BLK 360 essentially. Now, both products got its pros and its cons, and I think the biggest pro for the NC Tech Lazarus VR will be the price point.
Can you take us through some of the other specs? I know you
on the technology side, there's not much difference. The BLK is 360,000 points per second, where the NC Tech on the spec sheet is 300,000 points per second. So it's not a big difference. I think, and the ranges and the accuracies are more or less the same ballpark. I think the biggest difference is the weight of and the size of the camera.
Does that matter? I mean, if you told me I could have one camera for less than 10,000 and the other's less than 20,000?
Well, if I look at the price and I see I can get a camera for about half the price or 2/3 of the price, I would say, well, I'd carry around a little bit of extra weight quite easily. If you look.
Okay, but so if you've gone through all the specs and it's highly geeky, but I think the short answer is the difference is price. And then I think there's one other significant difference is, does NC Tech have a partnership that they're going to announce with Matterport? And just to be on parity, they must make that announcement, because if they don't, then anyone who's sold on Matterport is going to say, I know that camera is $10,000 more, but I'm going to get the $10,000 more camera because I want the Matterport platform.
You see, Dan, I think what will really make the point is it is a UK company, okay, up in Scotland, I think, and the current market is mostly UK and a bit in Europe, and I don't think they have got any penetration in the US, which is the biggest market, and I think it makes absolute sense for them to have some sort of joint venture with Matterport to have access to because that will give them a lot of mileage and access into the US market.
I think not even just the U.S. market, even just this week, we've been posting in the forum, Matterport putting out promotional tools in Spanish and French. I would imagine that we'll see Chinese soon, that we'll see Japanese soon. They put out a video in, I'm probably missing another language. So I would say that Matterport is probably the Goliath in this space, that with so much funding and probably so much revenue, is capable of bringing to any of the partners the scale from a marketing perspective. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Matterport has reached critical mass, and in order for NCTech to reach critical mass, they have to piggyback on somebody else in order to achieve it. That's my point.
I think that's true today with any company, that if you want to scale quickly, scaling is done by partnerships, strategic alliances, not inventing in-house, which is something that's a little bit frustrating to me, because I think Matterport has always had this bias that we must design, develop internally and create solutions as opposed to partnering. And so again, that's why I thought this partnership was so exciting, because it was among the first announcements. There's only been a handful of announcements that Matterport has made in years about partnerships, and that with the Leica Geosystems BLK360. So I do believe that we're going to see lots of strategic alliance partnerships announced. And particularly in the camera space, Matterport really doesn't actually need to be in the camera business, as long as there are other camera companies creating cameras at all price points. I don't think we're going to see Matterport abandon the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 2 Lite anytime soon. But certainly there's absolutely no need for them to go on the high end when you have options like the BLK360, the Lazarus VR, and I believe that the delay in NCTech coming out with the Lazarus VR scanner and camera is absolutely, this is my opinion, this is what I would imagine, but a delay of we're coming out with the camera in September to the camera is still not commercially available today, April 13th, 2018. I believe it's because they've chosen to make sure that when the camera comes out, that it's completely compatible with the Matterport cloud, so that it's easy, fast, and seamless to use both a Matterport camera and a Lazarus VR scanner camera to capture a space. And frankly, if they don't come out at SPAR 3D Expo and Conference in Anaheim in June 2018 with that announcement, I think they're going to have, that's going to be a big problem for them. Pardon?
I would have missed the boat.
Thank you. They would have missed the boat. They would have missed the train. They would have missed any form of transportation that has left the station. And I have to think that the NCTech people, as soon as they heard the Matterport announcement with Leica, that immediately changed their marketing plan. And so that's why I'm predicting, Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum, is predicting that at SPAR 3D 2018, that Matterport and NC Tech will announce a partnership for the easy, fast, and seamless capture using the NC Tech Lazarus VR and Matterport Pro 2D first generation, second generation, and second generation light cameras to work together to capture spaces that again enable the height, scanning outdoors in sunlight, and bringing precision of measurement at a greater distance. To me, it just seems so obvious that it's SPAR 3D. Just what is that? That's about just shy of 2 months from now that we're going to see that. And if we don't see that, I'm going to be so surprised. I would say stop watching WGAN-TV because you're wasting your time, because the predictions here are completely off base. But I'm telling you today, that it's just obvious to me. Leon, it actually is just so obvious to me that we're going to see that announcement.
Yeah, I will agree. I think if I looked at NC Tech's hiring history, and they were recruiting distribution people at the end of last year. So when you start recruiting the distribution people, you need to ship product not long after. So I think they're getting ready to ship some product, and that is all exciting, because I think we need a bit of competition, as always. It's good.
Yeah, I think if you study the job board more at NC Tech, I think part of what you'd probably see is also what jobs are they not advertising? Are they setting up offices to sell in the no? They work with camera distributors elsewhere, and I think they look at Matterport and say, this is an opportunity to leverage the movement of Matterport to help sell more cameras. And I think for Matterport service providers that are looking at the BLK360, I would say, wow, I think we're within 2 months of moving to a camera that's under $10,000. Today we're having a discussion about a camera scanner that's under 20,000, and within the matter of 2 months, we're going to have a conversation about a camera scanner that's less than 10,000, and that becomes that much more interesting if you're a Matterport service provider. For one or two or a couple of jobs, you'll be able to pay for your new device and be able to expand your market beyond residential real estate, beyond commercial real estate, to include construction architect projects that depend on that point cloud. I've always said from the beginning of time that the data captured is far more valuable than the actual photography. And that data, in my opinion, is a larger universe of potential clients who have more money to spend on bigger projects more often.
Agree with you. Then I'm going to ask you a question. So maybe it's not relevant, but
okay.
Seeing that you feeling like Nostradamus here, when in your view do you see the Pro 3 coming out?
Never. There's absolutely, in my mind, there's no reason for Matterport to come out with a higher end camera.
Okay.
I would say Matterport would be wasting their time, their money, their resources, their priorities, any and everything for Matterport to spend any additional time trying to invent a higher end camera. To me, this is like in the United States, when the railroads were built, they started on the West Coast and the East Coast, and at some point in the middle of America, they connected. So I think what we're starting to see is that the higher end cameras are getting lower in cost, and they'll match Matterport. So why bother? I mean, do you disagree with that, Leon? Do you think Matterport's working on the Pro 3 camera?
Yes.
Why?
That's my gut feel. You in the tech world, you need to continuously invest in R&D, and I think I don't think it's in the near term. My gut feel is 18 to 24 months off, but I think there will be something smaller and better, and I'm not sure you can do it any faster than it is at the moment, but you can probably make it lighter and cheaper. So I think as the price point of the higher end cameras come down, Matterport's price point will also come down. There will probably some competition playing in the starting to play in the Matterport space of equipment. Some other competition which will by default push the pricing down, but that's coming. I think it's a matter of time.
Well, I think it depends on how you define Pro 3. So I would say Matterport is going to continue to iterate to improve the existing camera, but will we see something transformational that is worthy of a Pro 3 name versus the Pro 2 versus the Pro 2 Lite? I really don't see that. I shouldn't say that because sometimes Matterport surprises me and does things that I think they're wasting their time and their money and their energy on. Leon, I think they would be far better.
I think somewhere the realization within the Matterport organization will come is that they're not really in the product selling business, but they are in the services business. And in order to make money out of the services business, they need to get more cameras in the marketplace. In order to get more cameras in the marketplace, they need to halve the price of the Pro 2. And the only way you can halve the price, I mean, you've got the basic set of components that goes into a box, is to either re-engineer the componentry, get suppliers that can make the components cheaper, but somehow you need to cut. I mean, if you look at the light price versus the Pro 2 price, there's such a huge difference between the two. Now, I'm not sure if they position the price there from a marketing point of view or from a cost point of view. My gut feel it's from a cost point of view, and they take an additional margin on the services that they're selling on that. So I think there is room to move bigger volume in terms of cameras at a lower price point.
Well, if you think about it, Leon, because we're both probably believers in the you make money on your razor blades, not on the razor. That in a perfect world, Matterport would give away the cameras. If you could figure out who the people were that were going to be very prolific scanning, you'd give them a camera because you'd make your money on processing and hosting. But you actually, you don't know who the people are that are going to be the ones who are highly productive, and therefore you have to charge something. So interestingly, I think when you talk about a Pro 3 camera, maybe all of us think about that means a higher grade camera. I think to your point, it's actually a lower grade camera to say, how does Matterport come out with an under $1,000 solution and leave the high end to the partnerships such as Leica and NC Tech, I would imagine that the under $1,000 solution could very well be an iPhone 11, which will probably include everything.
Then this will have, in the next version or the following version, have depth sensing capabilities, and which will force the change.
Yeah, so that is like that's a whole nother show that we could probably riff for an hour. But I think to your point is, I think about when I got my iPhone 8 Plus and it's got the dual lenses on it. To me, this was like a Trojan horse for something bigger coming, knowing that I believe 4 years ago Apple purchased an Israeli company that does depth sensors, that I could imagine that we're going to see, because of those two lenses, that's going to enable the depth sensor capability as Apple keeps reinventing the device. So I think what we will actually see is that in our pocket we will be carrying a Matterport capture camera that happens to double as a phone. So that's, I think, where Matterport will be spending its resources, is on the lower end of devices, because if you're in the business of making money from hosting and from processing and hosting and ancillary solutions and whatever else, invented, to be invented, so forth, that it doesn't make sense for them to actually come out with a higher priced camera. It just will only make sense probably for them to keep coming out with a lower cost, or partnering or figuring out strategic alliances, or leveraging existing solutions like iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I think kind of nicely leads us into the kind of the third and final segment of our show. Before I move on, Leon, did you have something else that you wanted to comment in terms of predictions? You got some predictions of your own?
No, I think life always surprises me, so I'm looking forward to see what's coming.
Yes, I can't wait for the future to arrive. I'm just like, every day it only gets more exciting in our space. I think when I bought the camera, before that I was doing 360s with a fisheye lens, a Canon 5D Mark III, rotating it on a nodal point or something, spending gobs of time stitching, and all of a sudden here comes Matterport, and it just made everything that I was doing totally irrelevant, because it made it easier and faster to do stuff, and then to do even at a different level. And I think today that there are more than 80 different one-click 360 camera solutions. Isn't that crazy? In just about 4 years. And even at the high end of cameras that came out that cost $40,000, $50,000, now I believe you get the same specs for about $3,500. So that's really nuts. Which kind of leads us into our next topic, is I wanted to talk about what's coming up on WGAN-TV in the architects, engineers, and construction space. So today, Friday, April 13th, we've been doing a show on Matterport plus Leica BLK360, the beta testing that's going on. On Thursday, April 19th, super excited, we're going to have a program about Cupics doing split screen to compare to the 3D BIM model. And just to tease you a little bit, Leon, I've already had a chance to take in, so just a little bit of tease on it. I want to save all of it really for Scott Anderson, the director of sales, who's been on WGAN-TV before, and I know you've been on those programs as well, so I thank you for that. Crazy exciting. I can only describe it as magic. But I got to see, I'd say, 3 things that just blew me away. First is we've already been seeing, is that Cupix, cupix.com, enables the capture, the creation of a 3D model without a 3D scanner. I won't go into the process of photogrammetry and videogrammetry, which is even more crazy and exciting, but that's with Cupix, essentially any 360 camera. So whether you want to scan with you want to capture a space with $130 360 camera, or a 3,500 solution, or even beyond, it doesn't matter. So anyway, so in my mind, Cupix is very much like when we experienced Matterport. But what I got to see was a split screen where the construction site for, let's say, April 1st was here, and right next to it, let's call it March 1st, was right here. And so as I moved one screen, the other screen changed, and I could see work in progress. If you're the person who's put $100 million into a project, and it's in a different city, and you want to monitor work in progress, you don't have to fly 10 people to the site to physically do an on-site. You have a photographer who shoots the space, and the next day you're doing a side-by-side comparison to say, how much work was done since last week? I want to see it. That was amazing.
You can have a weekly meeting, and you can hold the people to account as to what they did or did not do in the last week.
Yeah, and here was the part that was really crazy, is then I got to take a look at the BIM model, the original vision of the architect in 3D, side by side, with the actual 3D walkthrough to say, okay, and as I walked through the space, the BIM model was changing. So anyway, we're going to do an entire episode where Scott is going to demo that, and then we're going to discuss it at length. But I'll tell you, my initial reaction blew me away, thought it was magical, and it wasn't any harder than using Matterport to look at a 3D tour. It's really so easy to walk through a space. I guess that's probably the definition of magic is it's just, you have no idea how all this is done, but it works just like you would expect it. You know, split screen. Okay, I want to compare the 13th floor with the 13th floor from a week ago. I want to compare the 13th floor with the original BIM model. Easy peasy, really amazing. So anyway, that show is coming up on WGAN TV live at 5 on Thursday, April 19th. Greenwich Mean Time -4 hours. It's 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And then the next day, on Friday, April 20th, 2018, we're going to have Metroplex 360 founder Chris Hickman discuss his actual hands-on experience of shooting Matterport with a Leica BLK360. So we're going to ask him about specifically the Matterport plus BLK360 experience for capturing a space. So he's got a BLK360 on loan. Chris, if you're watching, make sure you get done your scanning in time for your show, because we're already talking about it and we're really excited about it. So this is our opportunity to hear firsthand from an actual Matterport service provider who is using the BLK360. And I think anyone in the We Get Around Network forum, if we say Metroplex 360, you know that Chris is a rock star when it comes to all things Matterport. So to be able to have a rock star on our show talking about his experience with BLK, does he like it, not like it, hard, easy? What would you call it? The ramp up time to learn? So help me out, Leon. What would you call that? The learning curve.
The learning curve.
What's the learning curve, if any? And so, tell us about that experience. So really excited to have Metroplex 360 founder Chris Hickman on the show. That's Friday, April 20th, 2018. And then I would say related is that we're going to have a representative of Leica Geosystems on the program talking about the BLK360. We'll get a demo and discussion with a Leica representative. We don't have a firm date for that, but I would say that that's likely to take place, let's see, 21, 22, 23, the week of April 23rd, that will actually have a representative on. And so that'd be a great time if you have questions to join us in the virtual studio in order to ask your questions firsthand. And then a couple other things is that I will be at the SPAR 3D Expo and Conference June 5. Correction on the dates. It's June 5th through the 7th in Anaheim. And so I fully expect to see NC Tech there and Matterport there announcing their partnership. I would imagine that we will see Matterport and Leica say for the first time that the mashup of Leica BLK360 and Matterport is now available to anyone. And I think that SPAR 3D conference will be a kind of the flashpoint for any new announcements that Matterport might have in this space for quite some time, meaning they're either going to say, this is available commercially today, or we want to tell you about new partnerships. Excuse me for a moment. New partnerships that are either announced and the deliverables will come, or announced and we're delivering. So I think it's certainly possible that we will hear that that NC Tech will announce that the Lazarus VR is compatible partnership with Matterport. Whether or not it's commercially available on that day probably remains to be seen. I'd like to think they're far enough along in testing that it's commercially available. But given that Matterport generally does beta testing in some form or fashion and that is public, that it's probably a little bit late for Lazarus to be able to say, and it's commercially available with Matterport today. But I firmly believe, and Leon, you have to give me grief in the forum if I am totally off base in my prediction. I've invested a lot of time in today's show telling you that it's absolutely clear to me that the world will end on whatever day that NC Tech and Matterport will announce at SPAR 3D Expo and Conference a partnership that mirrors, that is identical to what Matterport and Leica have announced. So, are you ready to write your grief for me? Give me grief now, because
I'll give you a lot of grief. I'll give you a lot of grief.
So
I think I tend to start coming away to your way of thinking. Dan, I think if you do the analysis, I think they don't really have, that is the right way to go for them. It will make a lot of sense. And I think at the end of the day, volumes and money talk. So.
Yeah. So I think all these kinds of shows that we have coming up on on the AEC space it's super important as Matterport service providers to get up to speed on what's happening in this space, because the budgets are bigger, the spaces are bigger, get off the treadmill of trying to do residential real estate and competing with a ever spiraling price going down, and be prepared that you're going to need to make an investment in a higher end laser scanner camera that will enable you to get bigger jobs for more money. And I just must tease one other thing, Leon, because I know you've been on the show. You were on the show when we were talking to Scott at Cupix, and I was just probably falling off my chair about this videogrammetry. Part of what Scott will likely say is, when we talk to him on Thursday of next week, Thursday, April 19th, 2018, is that you can scan a space, 40,000 square foot space, in about 2 hours. And, anybody who's been doing Matterport, would say, well, me personally, I would say it takes about an hour to do 1,000 square feet. So that would be about 40 hours, which would be about 4 or 5 long days that can now be done in 2 hours. And you would say, well, how is that possible? And I just say that the shorthand is you don't scan, you use a 360 video camera, smashed up on your hard hat, put it on video, 360 video, and walk at a nice pace through a space and upload it to the Cupix platform. So I think Matterport has some serious competition that is coming. It's presently in beta testing, and you can actually test it now. You could be bidding on a project for a construction site that's 100,000 square feet, and you could be shooting it multiple times simply by walking the space. And I probably oversimplify, because you really have to understand all the things that are going on, because I think it's possible that you could do something and all of a sudden you couldn't build your model because you were walking too fast and you didn't capture enough space. Anyway, so getting separate and aside. But I think what I wanted to say there, Leon, was it's really an exciting time to be in this space, because the solutions that are coming rapidly, and the price is coming down. And for all of us that have expertise in this space, it's important to start learning, what's coming and what's available, because it can be very disruptive in a good way to your business. Bigger budgets, bigger spaces, happy days ahead.
Yeah, and I think the market is just going to open up once everybody becomes more aware of what is really happening. I'm looking here in the UK. The age of buildings here are so old, and there's no documentation on these buildings, and it is just a huge market. Every building needs documentation, and every landlord, and it's a nation of landlords, they need a proper documentation of their buildings. That alone, it's huge.
Yeah, I think a number of years ago, we if you to listen to Google's vision to say we want to map the world of outdoor spaces, and say, wow, that sounds pretty ambitious. Well, they're making a lot of progress on that. And then the next thing that follows is to map the world of indoor spaces, or certainly at least the indoor commercial spaces. And the price of technology is coming down. The quality of the technology is just getting that much better. I always think there needs to be a problem that needs to be solved, and somebody has to have money that they're willing to pay. So even though there may be a lot of historic buildings in England that are worthy of being scanned, the question is who's going to pay for that. I think for us as Matterport service providers, or call us 3D scanner professionals, or whatever you want to call us, photographers, pros, there's still going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit in the AEC space. And I'm telling you, when you watch the Cupix show next week, it's going to blow you away. And when Cupix, in my opinion, likely announces that Cupix is commercially available at SPART, when they're at SPART 3D, that the question that every one of those attending is, how do I find a photographer that can do Cupix? Or how can I find a photographer that does Matterport plus Lazarus VR? How can I find a photographer that does Matterport plus Leica BLK? So I just think that's super exciting for all of us, because whether we really realize it or not, we were instantly anointed Google Street View photographers as soon as Matterport enabled the ability to publish to Google. And I think in a similar way, as a seminal moment, having these higher end scanners is going to enable a much larger market for Matterport, which translates to us as photographers, that there's bigger budgets, larger spaces, scanned more than once. So, Leon, have I exhausted you?
Thank you, Dan. But I enjoy your chats.
I enjoy visiting with you, Leon. You can have the final word. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm very excited about the things that are happening. I'm excited about hearing about Cupix and the latest stuff. I've been reading up a bit about, quite a lot about photogrammetry, and now the latest stuff, videogrammetry. So I can't wait to hear what Scott tells us about that, and actually seeing it in action. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Cool. We should do a little selfie. So we have a little something. I'm sorry, I got to move my screen so I can't see myself. So a little selfie for our screen grab. Big smile. I know you all have no idea what that was, but anyway, that's our thumbnail for today's show. So Leon, thank you very much. Leon van Zvel in the UK, about 15 minutes away from Heathrow. It's close. A member of the We Get Around Network Forum, who often writes really interesting pieces. He does the deep dive on different devices. He's the ultimate photography enthusiast meets spherical photography. So Leon, always exciting to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me. I think we had a much better show because we had a chance to have you on the show for us to chat. So thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. And I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. And you've been watching WGAN-TV live at 5 from the UK and from Atlanta, Georgia. Bye-bye. Leon, thanks again. I know it's late there for you, so enjoy your evening, and thank you to your wife for sharing you with us.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.